All right. Good afternoon, guys. We're lucky enough to have Mr. Nate Leslie from he's a certified executive coach and former professional ice hockey player. Nate, thanks again for taking time out of your schedule. Want to kind of kick it off and tell the class kind of your background in the sports industry.
And we should add an Endicott alumni. I did the
There you go.
Master's
Yeah.
in Education program,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's how I
Yep.
connected with you. Yeah, I did it in Madrid,
Absolutely. Yep. The
Spain
power
back
of
in
networking.
'07 and '08. No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my past, it's not a traditional route, and I hope that some of my story can help inspire people to think in a little bit of a creative way about their place in the sporting world and the leadership world. I guess probably very few athletes have similar stories. Everyone's got their own unique journey. I spent most of my pro career in Europe, bouncing around in a few different countries, almost never in the same place twice, always looking for a new contract at the end of the season. And that lasted just under 7 years. Started out, I'd grown up a little bit in Switzerland, so I could play in the Swiss national leagues as a Swiss Canadian, and played in Switzerland, over to Britain, back to Switzerland, over to Britain again for a few years, in London in the Super League, and then a year in the Swiss National A League, and then had an opportunity to head back to North America and played in the minors down in Texas. A very short stint. I broke my arm there right before the team was going to pay for my grad school, so I thought that was a great opportunity. And back before you could type your GMAT, I don't even know if you can type your GMAT, but broke my hand, couldn't write it, and decided that my love of hockey was dwindling at that
Mm.
time, and decided to shut her down at that point. So yeah, and then ended up followed a lady to New York City, and was living in New York, and started a sport development business 16 years ago with one private lesson on the outdoor rink in Central Park. And 16 years later, one of our businesses that we have in hockey development, we service a couple thousand athletes in many countries around the world now. So started small and started entrepreneurial, almost in survival mode, and just tried to think always outside the box, and see where one connection would lead, and the next and the next and the next. And here we are now. I'm based in Vancouver, BC, in Canada. And it's been a great ride. So we have a couple of businesses now that we'll get into here.
All right. Want to, I guess, kind of delve a little bit deeper and a little bit more into some of the company information.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's had many iterations, as many small businesses do. Uh, the sport development side is called Leslie Global Sports, lgsports.ca, and that's primarily a hockey development company. Although we called it Leslie Global Sports many years ago, I was teaching, coaching a number of different sports in the school system in New York City at the time, and always believed in the value of multi-sport athletes. Hockey ended up being my thing, but I was coaching a lot of sports at the time, and I just wanted to share that philosophy that the things that we learn in sport, doesn't matter what sport it is, are really valuable later in life. So while that's been a hockey development company, summer camps, coaching development programs for minor hockey coaches, for many years. I now have a 6 and a 7-year-old, and currently they have no interest in hockey. So it's going to be interesting to see how that business grows or doesn't grow. I'm not sure, into new sports that they're interested in. As I mentioned, I did my master's through Endicott. I've never been to your beautiful campus because I did it in Madrid, Spain. And I did the education program while I was teaching at a prep school, a private school in New York City. And that really helped shape my view of coaching sport as an educator, not a drill sergeant, and really helping trying to nurture every athlete, not just the cream of the crop. Every kid's a human, and every kid can benefit from great coaching, and have really enjoyed that philosophy and tried to instill that in the coaches that we work with around the world, in places like New Zealand and Mongolia, and across the east coast of the States and the west coast of Canada. And through that time, I was experiencing this desire to always continue to learn and grow as a leader. And then a few years ago, went back to school again to Royal Roads University on Vancouver Island and did my graduate certificate in executive coaching. And so that business is, you can find that at nateleslie.ca, and that's really focused. Executive coaching is the art of helping leaders find the solutions to their own challenges by asking engaging questions. And through that, helping leaders learn a new way to lead, not need to have all the answers, not need to be the drill sergeant. It's no longer a top-down hierarchy out there in the world, and helping leaders support their teams through a curious-based approach, and leveraging the skills and assets and personality types and diversity in your own team that you're leading. And that's my new journey, and it's fascinating. And I'm really happy to be able to share a little bit of that insight with your group today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want to, I guess, dive a little deeper into that and kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. It's leadership. For so long, so many of us thought it was this intangible thing that Anthony has and Nate doesn't, or Nate has and somebody else doesn't. And really, it comes down to treating people the way that they want to be treated in three buckets: alignment, collaboration, and growth. And really helping your team, whether it's sport or corporate, small business, educational, really be clear on what's expected of them, and helping them design that as well, and how that work aligns with the vision of the organization. And once that foundation is laid, then teams can collaborate better, which work together well to achieve not only some goals, but more goals than they would have otherwise in a high performance setting. And then finally, the growth piece, that the leader is making sure that that person's life is better because they work with you, that they are developing professionally and personally. You're not going to become the CEO overnight, but that every day you're taking steps to develop your professional life, and that your work is helping you get in that direction. And so that's kind of the leadership framework that we work under. And again, the art of coaching, we've borrowed the word coach from sports. And I think for centuries, many of your students will agree, a lot of coaches have been telling people what to do, when to
Yep.
do it, and how to do it for a long,
Yep.
long time. And the misnomer in executive coaching or business coaching is that it's my obligation to not give my client advice, but rather to ask engaging and probing and challenging questions, and holding that leader capable of finding the solutions within themselves to the challenges that they're facing. And that allows us to do is work with leaders across all industries, and it's fascinating. I've learned so much about so many people because we're not the subject matter expert. That leader is the subject matter expert. And as many people can relate, sometimes the hamster's on the wheel, right? And you're in the daily grind of solving problems and dealing with issues. And an executive coach can help that leader get the hamster off the wheel and be able to slow down and look at their big picture a little bit holistically, and address uh, maybe the root of an issue, or make sure that the path that they're on is productive, that what they're doing they should either continue doing, stop doing, or change in order to achieve the goals that they have for themselves and the organization. So it's a really empowering role to be in, that without the pressure of needing to be right, because you get to ask good questions and let the leader come up with the solutions to the challenges.
Um, in our area, one of the biggest things is obviously, in the sports industry is the power of networking. And we talked about this and how we got connected through, an Endicott mutual connection. Can you talk a little bit more about just networking in the sports industry? And I guess to kind of go a step further, when, folks always hear the word networking, but specifically, I tell them specifically, areas to go and kind of lean towards. Can you, I guess,
Yeah.
maybe talk a little bit more about that, how powerful it is, and steps to take forward to working in the industry?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question, and can have really powerful results for people. And I'll try to be succinct here on 3 or 4 different points. I remember as a professional athlete looking up in the stands, and there's that. I hope that I didn't have a big ego, but the professional athlete ego is, whoa, all these people are paying to watch us play. And as the athlete, you're the entertainment. If my 43-year-old self could go back to 22, I'd look around that audience and say, wow, there's probably some fascinating people there
Mm.
that have done amazing things in their lives. And the fact that they're enjoying watching this game that I get to be a part of, that's probably a door that I could open quite easily while I'm an athlete, to explore and learn from them what it is that they've done that allows them the privilege to be sitting in the expensive seats, or whatever the case may be. The sporting world that you have, that's a common bond. And I know in your part of the world on the East Coast, I know you have students all over, but I know in your country, a lot of people love sports, and that common topic can open a lot of doors for people. That's number one. Um, Number two is people think they need to come to a conversation with all this great insight. It turns out people really enjoy talking about themselves. And one of the best ways to come across as a good human is to take interest in someone and ask them good questions. No different than I just talked about with the coaching. Zig Ziglar, a leadership guru, tells the story of going to a cocktail party, and all he did was ask people questions, and he only had to ask 3 or 4 in the whole night, and people just talked. And at the end of the night, they thought, that guy is a great guy. Wow, he was so interested in me. Yet most of us go to a cocktail party and think we need to be the one doing the talking or telling the stories. So I mentioned that here. As we think about networking with a lot of your students, they're maybe at the beginning of their career, and as they go out into the world and they're trying to network with people of influence, people of authority, people that might be able to help them along the way, uh, being humble and being curious will go a long, long, long way. Um, Most of us can think about the party that we've been at, and that Yahoo in the corner just won't stop talking and hasn't asked a question all night, and thinks he's just networking, right? Yeah. So to be curious and ask good questions is really, really important. The third one is it's amazing what happens with time. Um, I could say a cliche and then say in this day and age, people want things to happen instantaneously and all that stuff that is proving to be true. The simple fact of the matter is, one day I woke up in my low 40s here, and my friends are the ones doing the hiring. They're owning the companies. They're the executives. And so with time, the relationships happen, the network happens, and not burning bridges and just
Mm.
being a good human and trying to add value to situations, people will absolutely remember it. Athletes that have coached from 8 years old, now they're 18 or 20 years old, they're the first ones that I think about when I think, how cool would it be to hire people we've trained that have learned it our way, coming through the ranks. And that one girl, man, she just sticks out. I still think about her, how great a kid she was at 8, how great a kid she was at 12, at 14, at 16. I wonder if she'd be interested in helping us out with this, right? And then trying to find a position for that person to be successful in. So asking engaging questions, letting go of your ego, and using opportunities to connect with people on a really human level, and knowing that things do take time and they will come around. You and I met because I went to Endicott, but I went to Endicott because my mother taught at the International School of Zurich 30 years ago with Rick Pacheco, who leads your education program. So it was a network, a teaching networks that started 30 years ago, how I ended up at Endicott, and here I am today. So
Yep.
it's and you can't always wait 30 years. I get it, but if you do all three of those things that I just mentioned, good things will happen.
Excellent. The other thing as well, we talked about this previous kind of expand their network and have that entrepreneurial spirit in the sports industry. Can you talk about that? I think, some folks have this tunnel vision of, I just want to work for the Red Sox, the Patriots, or the Vancouver Canucks, whatever it may be, and knowing that there's a bigger world out there of maybe, something that you're passionate about and putting that into play and talking about that. And I think sometimes people get a little afraid of stepping outside of that comfort zone. Can you talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
that? The world is bigger in the sports industry than they may realize.
absolutely. And I'll try to be succinct here because it's my story. And some people, this might sound like advice. I don't want it to sound like advice. If what I share with you in my story helps you say, oh, Nate could have done this and that thing he's worked on would have gone a lot quicker, great. If you say, hey, that kind of route, entrepreneurial route is for me, great. If you think, nah, I'm going to stick to the larger organizations, that's fine too. So I get to just throw it out there, and your students get to accept or reject it on their own. Um, Starting small. So as I mentioned, I started with one private lesson in New York City because I came out of being a professional athlete, and I had an education from the University of Victoria, and I really had no idea how the world worked. I thought if I could start doing these lessons, I'll meet somebody and they'll, I don't know, offer me a job. That's what I thought would happen. And one kid turned into two, and two turned into four, and four turned into eight, and now we oversee the training of a couple thousand people in 3 or 4 countries around the world every year. And we started small, and we started uh, looking where there was a need and being in service of others. And private lessons grew to clinics, grew to summer camps, grew to thousands of kids in summer camp, and and that has been a really incredible journey for me, and a low risk way to do something that I love. I've had to learn accounting. I've built 4 or 5 websites, and that's now a hobby. I'm constantly refining them and working on them. I've had to learn my own marketing. I've had to learn organization. I've had to hire coaches. I've had to train coaches. And if I think about where I am now compared to 16 years ago, it's night and day. And all the while, I kind of joke that I've been able to avoid having a real job.
Hmm.
That so I think it was maybe a little bit stubborn that I didn't want to work up that corporate ladder. And that's why I say you can accept or reject this. I've chosen to look for those niches where I can add value. I did feel as an athlete that so much was out of my control. I could be working as hard as I could for one reason or another. Could be the lineup, could be every athlete knows someone else new comes into town, they're onto the team that's better at my job than me. Next thing I'm out of ice time. I feel like as an athlete, I worked so hard, and every year I was looking for a new job. And I think that influenced my entrepreneurial spirit. I remember thinking as an athlete, I have more to offer the world than being the 13th forward on a professional hockey team. Ninth forward one day, 13th forward the next day. And I thought, what could I do that would add value and grow over time, um, and get me excited to get up in the morning because you see that growth, and excited because maybe the youth sport world is a little better off because I'm a part of it. I had my parents were professional. My father was a professional coach and a teacher before that. My mother a teacher for 30 years. And so doing good for others has kind of always been in our family. Luckily, in 30 years of professional hockey coaching, my father was only fired twice, and he's visiting right now. He's down the hall. I won't bring him in to tell you the story because it's a long one. And I kind of felt like if I could do my own thing and start small, I could be in control of my own future a little bit more. And sometimes people think that the safe route is the large organization corporate route. Um, you know, until COVID happens and a lot of people get laid off, and maybe it wasn't as safe a route as you might have thought it was. So um, if the entrepreneurial route is of interest to you, learn from everybody around you. And while you have that job in the large organization, add as much value to it as you can, be giving, and without it impacting the job you're doing for that organization. If you could start something small on the side, if that's a goal of yours, I highly, here's the part I don't want to give advice. I found value in growing small, growing incrementally. Others may have a different mindset. Hey, I want to do the entrepreneurial thing. I'm going to raise a bunch of money. We're going to get investors. I'm going to get partners. My experience was one of the best rules of partnership is get rid of your partner. That, you know, that having a, if you want to do it your way and you have partners, it's not really your way. So you have to be willing to really give there too. So those are some of the, I hope I've been clear that growing small and incrementally in a field, for talking sport, where you can add value, there is tons of opportunity. Parents want their children around great mentors and role models. And traditional nonprofit sport has really changed. And people like me are able to go into a nonprofit organization and charge to help train coaches, for example, to take some of that volunteerism off their plate. And so there are tons of opportunity in every sport. And to do it in a humble way where you're trying to do the right thing for kids, there's kind of unlimited opportunity there. And a word of caution is to have a lot of competitors in that sport, in the hockey development industry in Vancouver. And the ones who say they're better than the other ones, it comes back to haunt you. You know, there's competitors that are doing great work and they have a slightly different focus than mine, and that's fine. And there's a ton of value in sometimes when you sense from a parent that what you have to offer isn't necessarily what they're looking for. That's kind of fitting a square peg into a round hole. Saying, you know what, I think maybe what you're looking for might be over there. It's hard to turn away a customer,
Yep.
but sticking to what you believe is right and doing it in a humble way, I believe is the best route, rather than saying we're the greatest, we're better than A, B, and C. It's this entrepreneurial sport avenue it's too small a market, it's too small a world to take the bashing your competitors route to try to make it. We'll leave that to the big brands.
Any advice you'd give to our graduate students in the sports leadership program as they either, trying to elevate to the next level or just starting off in their journey in the sports industry?
Yeah, again, it's as an executive coach now, advice is the dangerous word, because everybody's situation is different. Here's what I know has worked for me: being curious and being humble and giving to the organization, giving to the faculty, giving to your employer, your full self is the best route to get the selfish stuff that you want. Every friend of mine who owns a company, who hires, and my wife runs a big company and she just had to let somebody go yesterday, and I, working from home, I listened to the conversation from the next room. Every person who hires, who interviews, wants the next candidate that's walking in for the interview to be a great person they can enjoy spending the day with, that they can enjoy working alongside. The skills can be learned. So giving yourself to the organization and doing your best, the promotions will come, the opportunities will come. But going in fresh to an organization and trying to grab and claw and climb as quickly as possible is quite off-putting to those at the top. There's a more humble way to do it. And again, I'll repeat that. Every person that's interviewing somebody wants the next candidate to be the last one that they have to interview.
Yep.
They don't want to interview 100. They want to interview 3,
Yeah.
and for one of them to be great. Yeah. So be yourself and be humble, and be patient, and at the same time be relentless. That you you can create the opportunities for yourself. They're not given to us. We create them.
One of our students had a question here. In light of the recent pandemic, I guess, what do you see the future of the sports industry and kind of some avenues maybe for growth or, areas that can kind of start looking into?
You and I have talked about transferable skills, and it's the same conversation for an athlete transitioning from sport into the real world, into a job. It's the same for a corporate executive who's done the same thing for 20 years and is tired of it and wants to transition into a new industry. Learning skills that can be useful in multiple environments and being humble, I don't think you'll be ever out of a job. Where sports is going, um, for my own family, I'm experiencing the sports that are like, would I rather put my kid in a gym right now or go skiing? Um, One of them is a lot safer than the other one. I think that this isn't going anywhere overnight, and these are opinions, right? And I don't, and it won't be the last one we see in our lifetime. So being adaptable is really important, and I can imagine buying into the safest and best way to do it the new way is going to allow you to find opportunity as well, because you're adding value versus taking the approach that this is no big deal and it'll just go away. um, Call it the old guard just for argument's sake. It's real, and so to be adaptable and to be willing to help sports adapt, I think it's fascinating watching the major sports do the TV thing. If it's good on TV, that's a unique opportunity as well. If it's safe because it's outside, that's one. And a lot of outdoor sports are good on TV. And if it's good on TV, there's an opportunity as well. Uh, I imagine 100,000 people in a stadium is a bit of a ways off at the moment. So,
Mhm.
but never a better time in history to be young and new and have a paradigm that says, I'm willing to adapt to this new environment and do what it takes to add value. If you can look at it from an optimistic point of view like that, I think the world's your oyster, as they say. I think people are looking for that paradigm, for that way to view this.
Just had a couple of more questions. What, I guess, the biggest challenge, starting off your own business that was kind of maybe unexpected when you first start off? What are some of the challenges that you said, oh, never thought of that, prior to going into working into the sports industry?
I never thought I would do what I'm doing. Yeah. Um, so that's a great question. I think the challenge, if you're entrepreneurial, is being clear about shiny things. I can be distracted by something new and exciting. So it's being true to yourself. My father always said this about coaching professional hockey. You got to believe in your path and your philosophy rather than just bending to what somebody else wants. Because at the end of the day, you lay your own head on your own pillow at night and you want to feel good about it. So could I go down a route of AAA for 6-year-old hockey because I think there's a market for it and make good money at it? Yeah, probably. But would I sleep well at night? No, because that's not what 6-year-olds should be doing. And there's no child psychologist out there or educator who believes that it is. It's so being true to yourself and staying focused on what's right for you is really can be challenging. And right now, over time, as I've grown a few different brands, it's how do I, somebody might be realizing it, listening to it. Okay, he does this coaching thing and he has this hockey thing. It's like, how do you have a suite of opportunities and speak clearly about it and know how to divide your time and attention to the things that are most important, you can get really sucked down a rabbit hole of something that, is actually maybe procrastination, or you really enjoy doing it, but it's not helping the big picture. It's not helping your brand be really clear. So it's, yeah, the biggest challenges, just to reiterate that, are being clear on who you are and what your brand really is so that you can sleep well at night, and being clear on how you spend your time, because when you're in charge of it all, you can get pulled in many different directions.
Actually, that's our last question, students. One of the projects we're working on is branding, and a lot of folks are just launching their LinkedIn uh, page. What recommendations could you give to students in terms of, I mean, you touched upon it, the branding, how important that is, and kind of ways they can kind of navigate through social media, importantly. And we speak about this in terms of branding, in terms of, that's going to help with the job search strategies, but also if you do have your own business, how important that branding is to you.
Yeah, timely question, because launching my executive coaching, I've just gone through that. So I actually met with of course, he was a minor hockey dad willing to lend me some of his time, and went through a branding exercise to make my two brands clear yet related. So if anybody wants to go to lgsports.ca and then nateleslie.ca and put them side by side, hopefully you can kind of see that the parent company, there's a bit of similarity, like someone gets it. Okay, I was just on this site and now I'm on this one, and I see there's two businesses, not some guy trying to do a whole bunch of things. The LinkedIn one, the social media one, if you want to be controversial, if you want your brand to be edgy and opinionated, then go ahead and be educated and opinionated on social media. Um, if you want someone to look at your stuff, which they will do, and think, oh, that's someone with uh, an ethical backbone and a humble nature and would fit well in our culture, then the things that you write should reflect that as well.
Mm.
Um, I've kind of revamped LinkedIn over the last year or so to be, I want people to see, they're going to see what they see. So what do I want them to see? I want them to see the newly educated, second graduate degree, new thing, and they'll find my other brands, but I want them to see like the 2020 Nate, not some hockey guy that's trying to do this leadership thing on the side. It's like, so the message is, as our business has grown, so have I. We've evolved and have gone, and so it's telling the story. And it's amazing me in this new industry compared to the hockey one, compared to the youth hockey one, how powerful the image that you portray on LinkedIn is. I think on the youth sports side, it wasn't as prevalent. And now that I'm working in multiple industries, and you've got 30 seconds. So like, what's that headline? What kind of thought have you put into the image that you've posted? How curious are you on the things that you follow? Um, do you follow companies that, inspire you? Um, have you have you commented on something in a way that's like curious and respectful? Do you write yourself? Content-based marketing is the cheapest,
Mm.
best way for self-employed people to market themselves, which is, I have value to add the world, so I'm going to write about it, and I'm hopefully going to teach you a little bit. And in the meantime, you're going to grow your trust in me a little bit more because you're reading something that you're learning from, versus, a billboard of people drinking Budweiser or whatever in not a lot of clothing. That's the big brand. Your students probably know, but for that's the big branding. For those of us that are small, we're trying to market by educating, and social media is a really powerful way to educate your audience in a respectful way rather than just give your opinion on what everybody else is doing. Yeah.
Excellent. Nate, would you mind if any students, if they had any questions, they could reach out to you?
I would love that. I would really, really enjoy that. It's my chance to give back, and I would encourage them to do so. If anybody's On the leadership side, if I may just add this, if
Sure.
anybody's interested, leadership is a behavior, it's not a position. And you can start to learn leadership behaviors, like how do you show up? How do you treat people? How do you interact with people in the workplace? That's leadership. And if anybody would like to get a 20-year head start on that I never had, there is a little leader self-assessment on nateleslie.ca, any of the big green buttons, and they could click that and just and take that. And I would be really happy to debrief. No strings attached. It's just my way to give back
Sure.
to Endicott. And yeah, if I had a clear image at uh, 10, 20 years ago about what leadership was, it'd be fascinating to see where I'd be at now. I'm proud of where I'm at now, but yeah, you can start learning leadership now. So, and this is a master's in leadership, sport leadership program. So that's one way. And if they just have another question, they can just do that too. I'd be happy to chat with anybody, answer their questions for sure.
Awesome.